I worked in the stone quarry, and it's for the first time that I learned to push a wheelbarrow and to use a pickaxe. I'd never, or a shovel. I'd never done anything like that. But then, of course, eventually, I was transferred to that isolation section. And that's when we started working primarily in the limestone quarry. The medical treatment then was exceedingly bad because the doctors were all part of the apartheid regime. And they did not have the will to give you the best of treatment. They were all white. And some of the prisoners, political prisoners, refused to be treated with the disdain that they experienced. They would come, and they would check up on you so randomly to see, open your mouth, look at you, but with no kind of thinking or support of the ailment that you were suffering. And there's a story that Sadiq told me, he's also passed away now, of how one of your old comrades died in his arms because the treatment he had received was so poor. He was suffering all the time. They couldn't care a damn. That guy actually died in his arms. What they would do is, they loved showmanship, these prison guards. If somebody important was to come to the island, say Helen Suzman, for example, because she was a parliamentarian in the 90s, came to the island, then suddenly you would find that the beds in the hospital were finally made up and you had prisoners in these beds. But then when they were not there, you would find that nobody ever slept in those beds. If you were sick, there would be a mat between the beds on the floor, and that's where you will sleep to get your treatment if you ever got to hospital. So there was this constant showmanship to pretend that we were humanely treated. And one of the people that I respect greatly was Helen Suzman. She was the only woman in Parliament who made it an effort to get to the island, to find out what was happening. She was a stalwart who made the world know of the bad treatment we were experiencing. And she is one of the contributors that helped to make the transformation that happened on Robben Island. When it came to the day of my release, that was April 1971, I was so happy to get out. I hastily said goodbye to everybody there. We walked down the passage, waved to Madiba and the others, and I walked myself and my fellow prisoner, Gordon Hendricks. He's passed away now. And we were happy on our way home now by boat. When we got to the dockyard in Cape Town, there were the security police waiting for us. They picked us up and took us them. They had a headquarters in Loop Street, and we had to go to Loop Street in Central Business District, and there our banning orders were read out. They then took Gordon home, and they took, now he was living, I think, in Lansdowne somewhere, and they took me to Manenberg. I didn't know Manenberg. 1969, when with the forced removals, my mother landed up in Mannenberg. And that is where I had to go. Very confined space, very traumatic conditions, but I had to endure.
Okay.
What happens is, when I was placed under house arrest, there were rulings placed on my movement that from Monday to Friday, I had to be home by 7 in the evening. I could leave Monday to Friday at 6 o'clock in the morning, but I was confined to a geographical area. So if this was my geographical area, top of this little table, I could talk to one person at any time in that area, not two. If I talk to people in this confined area, two to people, that is a political gathering. Black mark against my name. From Monday to Friday, I had to stay, move within that confined area. If I stepped over that line into another area, black mark. Talk to one person, not two. What else was there? Yes. By Monday to Friday, by 7 in the evening, I had to be at home. I would have to report to the police once a week between the hours of 7 in the, 6 in the morning, 7 in the evening. If it's police station X, it has to be that police station. Because they want to know where I am. I have to report. You don't report late. You don't come home late. You have to report on time. Between 6 in the morning and 7 in the evening. You report late, black mark. You come home late, black mark. Those black marks add up. And eventually, you are shoved back into jail. When I was in jail, there were two prisoners who had repeatedly broken their banning orders. That was Wilfred Brutus and the other one, Henny Ferris from Worcester. Wilfred was the brother of Dennis Brutus. Both of them broke their banning orders, and they landed up in jail, each one for 3 years. So this is what happened to you if you do not stick. But the problem was that if you did not stick to those rules, you go to jail. You stuck to the rules, it is likely that you would lose your sanity. In that time, I did not get involved with any political being. I used to hang out with the gangsters in Mannenberg. And we used to get into all kinds of shit, you know. But they also realized, the police, that I was not involved politically. But one day, I had become so angry, so frustrated, and I was drunk. I decided just to leave home. My mother made me angry. There was no trauma counseling for me. I went to the police station in Philippi, and I said to them, you phone Speaker van Wyk and you tell them that I, Lionel Davis, had just broken my banning order. He must come and arrest me. They put me into a dark cell. Because I know I was drunk. I said, no, I don't want to be in the cell. I want to be in a cell where there's light. So that was the Philippi. So they put me into a cell where there was light, but there were some tough guys there. But I was in a filthy, angry mood. Now the guys think, you know, when you come in there, they want to show that they are tough guys. So they tried, this one tried to assault me. But, I fought, I had a bucket and I beat him with a bucket. And he was much younger and stronger. So I decided, no, if I can't bloody well beat you with a bucket, I'm going to bite you. So I bit him. And of course, I had the pluck. I called the station commander there. I say, I want to see you now. I want conditions changed in this thing. And this guy got so scared because I was now calling the cops into this thing too. And they left me alone. That morning, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, they let me go. And I walked from Philippi police station through Manenberg. It was the first time that I had an opportunity to walk through Manenberg at night. It was a time when you had these groupings formed by political organizations, but what do you call it? People concerned about the neighborhood. They were neighborhood watch. And they were now shooting carom and drinking tea and coffee. And they had these, kind of colorful jackets. You could see reflective jackets. And I stood there and I just enjoyed that moment. Was not prepared to go home. It was a Sunday morning, summer. Took a bus to Athlone, brought the bus back, came back, did not want to go home. I got past our house, and one of the side streets, I see there was a little small Volkswagen standing there, and the guy that I had just met recently, they were packing this little Volkswagen with blankets and so on. I said, hey, these guys are going to the beach. So I decided to join them. You know where they were going to? They were going to Sandy Bay. So I go with them to Sandy Bay. So we pass, and we pass the beach, and I see all these Kalgat men are there, young and old, exposing their bodies too. I didn't look, I promise you. And I passed by. But I couldn't go near the beach. There were caves there in Sandy Bay, and I spent my time at the caves. Other guys had their jaw out there. But the afternoon came, and I had to go home. That's only when it dawned on me, I am in trouble. Fortunately, I got home in the evening, but nobody actually came to look for me. I was not allowed to go anywhere, okay? But that is what we did. Now, just opposite this, where there's a fence there, here is outdoor, and then the next house starts. 2 houses. The guy staying, there's the fence, guy staying there was a guy that I knew from my area, District 6. Through this guy, my opposite neighbor, I got to know Manenberg, because I would jump over the fence. I couldn't go by the road because there were guys paid to watch me. The cops would pay their rent, buy them food, watch that man. So I could never go out, I would jump over the fence and we'd go and shoot carom, play dominoes, get drunk, and then I would come back the same way. And what would happen is I could not climb over the fence. I would just throw myself over the fence and lie there. But I did all of this just, to keep my sanity. No, unfortunately, I never got to see the mainland while I was a prisoner. And I wrote a slight poem about that experience. As an ex-political prisoner, my artwork expresses facets of my jail experience, moments of reflection, isolation, loneliness, deprivation, hard labor and no privacy. Freedom and incarceration are constant companions. Working in the quarries, we swung our picks and shovels, pushed wheelbarrows heaped with sand and stone. We touched the soil, even dug up roots to eat. Through all of this injustice and suffering, the mountain and sea, the flora, the fauna, were constantly in sight. Nature was our link to freedom. The sea, our gateway to the distant mountains. All of this interrelated, intertwined in our daily life on the island. What happens is that as a child in District 6, I loved drawing. I had no tuition in art. I had no mentor. I had no role model. But this love for wanting to draw took hold of me. It was a time when we were reading these comic books, Laurel and Hardy, and we saw these films of Superman and the like, or Cowboys and Crooks, and this was our inspiration. And of course, it was a time when there were very few cars on the road. We didn't own cars, so you could sprawl out on the street with a stone, a piece of clay, or perhaps a chalk, and just draw, lie flat on your stomach and draw. Or you draw on your slate, or you draw in your school books, or on the walls, of the buildings there. That was our palette. And so I never had arts education. My first formal art lessons I received at the age of 41. I had been under house arrest from 1971 until 1976. And after that, I was able to move more freely in South Africa. House arrest was worse than being in jail, because the trauma of isolation, of where you could go, how far you could go, who you could talk to, when you had to be at home, why you had to be at home, who you could talk to when you were in the street, who not, had such an impact on my life, negative impact on my life. But after that 5 years, I needed healing. No trauma counseling. But I came across the Community Arts Project at the beginning of at the end of 77. 1978, the beginning of 1978, I received my first art lessons. It was the beginning of great transformation in my life. To this day, I am still an artist. I believe that the freedom that we had gained had given me the opportunity to express myself in whichever way I want to. Life is not just about struggle, but it's also, there are times when we celebrate life, the beauty of nature. We can celebrate all of that, but we can also make political statements. So if you look at my work, I have a series of prints on life in District 6. I have written about many times, many stories about my life, my journey through life. In fact, at this moment in time, the Victoria and Alfred Museum in London have got 4 of my District 6 prints, which they want to put in a collection. So these things have happened. There's another work of mine which I did later at the Tupelo workshop, which the Wits University, they are writing about, screen printing and art, and they want to use this artwork. Oh, it's about, the history of black art in South Africa, especially printmaking. And they are using that artwork of mine for the cover of this article that they are writing at Wits. So these things are continuously happening. Going back to the island was not a problem for me. My problem had been what I had talked about now, the traumas that I experienced. I was one of the first former political prisoners to go and work there. I worked there for more than 10 years. I lived there for 10 years. And initially I was just a tour guide. But eventually I just became a prison guide. And that I did for 5 years. Next 5 years, I worked not only as a prison guide, but as a heritage educator. For me, it was part of that transformation. One of the things I did when I started working there, I found they were former white prison guards who had decided no longer to work as prison guards in other prisons. They came to work for the Robben Island Museum. But they still had that arrogant feeling that they were superior to other black people. You had young black people from high school who came to work on Robben Island. You had those from the colored community who came to work on Robben Island. But there was tension brewing between those who formerly had control of the island. They wanted to control the vehicles. They wanted to control the guidance of the boats and so on. Myself and the wife of a former white security prison guard looked at the scenario, because she was now working with me as a tour guide, and we realized that we had to somehow break through this log jam. We decided, the two of us, to start an organization called the Robben Island Village Association, RIVA, so that we could bring these people who had never lived together before to work together in the service of the Robben Island Museum. And to a large extent, we managed to break down those barriers. Friendships were made between people who had been prisoners there and people, some of them who were born on the island, who had authoritative jobs on the island from the white community. Friendships were made across. We broke down those barriers. And whilst working on Robben Island for 10 years, I spoke to thousands of people from different parts of the world, young and old. But what I had learned on Robben Island, that ability to stand together, to bring people together, I have taken that through my life on the island, talking to thousands of people over the years. My focus was breaking down those barriers. As an artist, working in, I'm a workshop junkie, working with people from different parts of the world. Bring people together, break down those barriers. And this is what I am still doing today.